Well, welcome everybody to Preserving Historic Roofs. That's the session for the 2021 Restoration Weekend. My name is Tony Winston, and I'm serving as a moderator for this session. And yes, I'm reading it off a script. Please use your chat button function on Zoom to ask your questions throughout this presentation. Please also let us know through the chat if you are having any problems hearing or seeing the speaker. Our professional speaker right now is Kurt Hord, and he has a very long and distinguished bio, which I'm only going to read a portion of it, Kurt, because we want to let you get right to the meat of the matter. So Kurt is with HKC Roofing. He's the founder and principal of, and I don't understand what Patina Slate and
here. I'm the training coordinator.
All right, so
I'm here with Henry, our owner.
All right, hello, Henry. Yeah, so this little bio is a little confusing. So what I can do is just talk about Kurt's study. He started in historic preservation with coursework in stereometry, which is a new word for me. I just learned that today.
Oh, you learned it today?
I had to look it up. I had to Google it. I didn't know what it was. So there was with theory in design and drafting, precedents were provided by copying influences such as Sears Modern Homes Catalog, Mariana Cruzado and Steve Moran pattern books. He's a consultant for the National Park Service, which is really very important to punctuate. HKC is toured to provide on-location craft roofing consulting, training, and expert fabrication on landmarks and built assets everywhere from the Caribbean to Southern California and New England since 2013. So with that intro and that bio, we also have already posted into the chat box the link for your company and the things that you provided. So we're already in place.
Right.
Oh.
Thank you for that. That was a wonderful intro.
You're getting glitchy. You're glitching.
I'm Kurtis Hord. This is Henry Mitchell. What? I'm glitching. Okay. I'll just repeat that. Hello, this is Kurtis and Henry with HKC Roofing. We are here to sort of invite you into our lab where we sort of train and demonstrate and work out, rehearse the skills needed to maintain the slate roofs that we find in the Cincinnati area. And we really pride ourselves on doing historic home, and that is a major focus of our training program here. So this is a rare opportunity to get to see it up close with good lighting. There's not a lot of glare, there's no sun, there's no rain, so you all get to see something that normally people have to brave a ladder and a lot of elements to zoom in and see up close. So it is going to be dirty. It is going to be noisy for a minute, and that will, and we'll kind of let you guys watch the work being conducted. And Henry's going to take the camera and zoom in and out. I'll put a little slate on, and then he can talk about what I'm doing it and why I'm doing it the way I'm doing it. I'm good? Yep. All right. I'm going to hop to the board, and then I just need you to go ahead and pass me the material to start this line. Okay. Yep. Other side.
So what we've done is mocked up a small slate roof section. And what we've done is tried to show the progression of how a slate roof would get started. So the first thing we did is we nailed on the first row of slate.
Yeah, it just shifted, but it's loaded fine. I felt the cash.
What is he doing?
Why are we making all this bad noise, Henry? What am I tapping for?
You'll have to take some breaks so that I can talk. Okay. No. So what Kurtis is doing is he's making holes with the slate hammer so that he can nail the slate on. The slate hammer has several purposes. One of them, it's shaped sort of like an ice pick so that you can pop holes right into the slate as you're working and create nail holes for yourself. So that's a demonstration of how to make a nail hole in a piece of slate. The other thing he's doing is he's going to tap on each piece of slate to make sure that it has the correct ring, the right sound, so that you know that it's a good, hard, solid piece before you apply it to the roof. If we come across a piece that sort of has a dead sound and it doesn't have the right ring, we'll call that out. We'll set it aside and we won't nail that piece on the roof, because more than likely that piece of slate has been compromised or has a crack in it that came from the quarry, and it would not be suitable to install on the roof.
All right, I'm gonna bring you on.
Okay.
Let him enjoy that. I was putting holes further out. 3-punch holes are falling on the crack in between the decking boards, so you move the nail holes up sometimes on a line so that you're on solid wood instead of right on the edge of a board where it would dig into the roof deck.
Can you talk a little bit louder, Kurt?
I'll repeat what he just said.
Okay.
So hopefully you can see the slates will come pre-punched with nail holes from the quarry. Hang on a sec, Kurt. From the quarry. And what Kurtis was saying is where the deck boards join together, there's a seam there. And every so often, these holes may line up with that seam in the wood decking. And so then it would be necessary to maybe adjust and place holes higher or lower so that you make sure you're nailing into a good solid board. And so that's what he was doing in this case. Go ahead and nail.
All right. Shoot. Okay, so we got a wobble here. And in that case, that's like a cut side. So we would process this out and use it for a kit or something like that. I'll stop.
Yep, give me a second. So this is another opportunity to call out a piece of slate and not nail it on the roof. So what we came across here is on the top portion of the slate, it's really bumped up, which might be hard to see, through video. But when you lay it on the roof, when you go to put the next row of slates on, they're going to immediately rock on this piece of slate. And so you constantly have to be looking for that as you're nailing slate on. They're referred to as knots, knurls, and curls that you're looking for in slate. And you got to check each piece as you put it on to make sure it's laying relatively flat, or else when you finish and you look up at the roof, you'll see 3 or 4 slates that are all kind of bumped up and rocking around each other. A really good example, hang on, Kurt. Yeah. A really good example is this piece here. I think you can probably even pick that up on camera. You see this really definitive line here. And the issue is that it's above the weather exposure line. If this were down on the exposed face, it would be no issue. And so really this was a problem from the quarry. Had they just flipped this piece around and punched the holes up here, it would have been a non-issue. This would have provided texture for the roof, and the overlying slates would have still laid flat on this piece. So it was really more of a quality control issue from the quarry.
What was that one, a big knot?
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Big ball. Yeah, a big ball.
So a question came in, what do you do with rejected pieces?
Hang on a second. Yeah. A question?
What do you do with rejected pieces?
So we'll set them aside, and if we can cut them into smaller pieces and use them in the valleys or the hips or the ridges, we'll still try to use them in areas on the roof. They just can't be nailed into the field of the roof.
Yeah, there's like when you say a triangle.
So if we saved a piece, maybe we can at least cut a valley piece or a piece that's going to be mitered, and we can still save it.
Oh yeah, that'll run. That's why I set those. When I split that one, you get two valley pieces out of one cut because it's the same angle. So if you save your triangles and set them aside, you can usually find the corresponding puzzle piece on the valley as you're going up the line.
We probably got enough slate nailed on.
Yeah.
Why don't we drop back
And do a repair?
Do a repair, and we'll talk about how we installed the jacks. A big thing when working on slate roofs and a lot of tile roofs is you can't walk on them. They will break. While they're very strong on end, they're not very strong when they're laid flat. And so you can't walk on them. And so it's really important how you stage the job and how you set up your roof jacks to access the roof. So what we did here was tried to demonstrate if we were starting a brand new roof or repairing an old historic roof, we would need to access the work area. And so the first thing we would do is set these, what are referred to as slate roof jacks. And the way you do that is you really only need to take out one slate, and then in order to get your jack in, go roughly 8 feet. Go roughly 8 feet and set another jack. And so when setting the slate jacks, these will adjust to the pitch of your roof. And these are different than a standard roof jack. These will allow you to place the OSHA compliant walk boards on them, because when you're staging a slate roof or working on it, you're going to be putting a lot of weight on these jacks. You have to stage the entire roof. All of the slate that's going to be installed has to set on these jacks and boards. So they have to be really secure. You're not going to use just a regular roofing nail. You're going to use a really heavy duty framing nail to secure these. But what's nice is there's a lot of simplicity in how these are installed. They're nailed in place, and then you just continue to roof. You slate right around them, and then as you work your way back down, you take the jacks out. And as you take the jacks out, you're left with an open pocket that you can slide a replacement slate into. And so Kurtis will he's now hammered down the heavy framing nails that were holding the jack in. And now he's going to show how we would work ourselves back off the roof and how we would fill these voids that were created from the jacks being in place.
Question that came in. Is this a good time to ask a question, or should we wait a minute?
Yeah, just hold tight. Sure.
The question came in is talk about the logistics of getting the materials to the roof, especially since the roof could be 3 stories high.
Yeah, that's a very good question. Like anything, there's a number of ways to do it. Anytime we're installing a new roof where there's going to be a significant amount of material moved to the roof, we will almost always set up scaffolding. Scaffolding will be set at the gutter line. That gives us a good, safe place to work, a place to stage equipment and materials. And then, then we will set our first line of jacks and boards. And then we will follow that method up the roof and we'll manually move them all to the jacks and boards. As far as getting the slate up to the scaffolding or up to the roof, hey Curtis, give me just a sec to finish this. There's probably a lot of background noise. But as far as getting the material up there, we may use a cable hoist, we may use a forklift. A lot of that stuff becomes job site specific based on just the job site conditions and what kind of access we have and that sort of thing. They also use a crane. But we do have to get the material up to the scaffolding one way or another. And then from there, it's generally manually packed and sorted and placed on the walkboards. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, do you wanna pick up you can pick up the computer and zoom in on me setting the.
No, that's okay. Well, yeah, why don't you get it?
I gotta get to this, I'm gonna chip a little bit of this corner so that I can get to this proud nail up here because I don't want this slate to be rocking on this proud nail.
Okay.
Yeah, the brakes. See? So I'm backing it with the hammer here. So I'm slate. Now I can get this nailed in. There we go. So now we'll be free to slide. Replacement. Sometimes you have to shave it a little bit of time to skinny. Perfect.
All right, now move aside a second. I'll explain what Curtis just did. So these are all 11-inch wide slates. So all we did is when we got to where the slate jack needed to go, we measured 11 inches, and then we went ahead and installed the next slate, and then we left a blank spot. That allowed us a space to install our slate roof jack. And then as I mentioned before, we can slide our replacement slate right in place. So that way, the roof looks completely undisturbed when you're done. And you would never know that a slate jack was. What we're doing now is exactly how you would repair any broken slate on any old historic home. So if a customer called and there are 10 missing or broken slates throughout their roof, which is really common, this is the same method we would use to go about repairing those slates. We need to pull the old slate out using a slate ripper, which is this handy tool here, which has been around for
as long as as long as we have written record of construction trades, which honestly doesn't go that far back because the guilds were very secretive.
Yeah, I mean it's been around a very long time. Iron workers and blacksmiths have been making these for hundreds of years. So anyway,
may I say something? You answered a question, or you partially answered a question. The question was, is it typical that on slate repairs, it's a onesie twosie, or do you typically see big sections of slate that needs to be repaired?
It's both. It's both. If a slate roof has been generally well maintained for the course of its life, it should be onesie twosie. As long as it's a good quality slate from North America and it's still in good condition, it can be onesie twosie. The issue we see is neighborhoods turn over, and a lot of these buildings are so old that the neighborhoods these buildings are in have experienced some level of decline during some part of its life. And there was probably a stretch of 20, 30, 40 years where that building was in disrepair. And at that time, of course, a lot of damage occurs. What should have been a onesie twosie repair now become a bigger issue, because when one slate came out or two slates came out, water got into those surrounding slates. And when these roofs were put on at the turn of the century, they were installed using steel nails, which are obviously corrosive. And so when the moisture got in around there, it corroded the nails of the surrounding slates and created a bigger problem. The slate roofs that are installed today are all installed using copper nails. So that wouldn't be as big of an issue, but of course, moisture to the wood decking would create its own set of issues. So it really is both. It just depends how well the roof's been maintained over the course of its life.
So at the end of your presentation, you'll talk about maintenance.
Yes, yep. We'll mix in some of the maintenance now. We'll also talk about maintenance, and we'll also talk about the different types of slate that we'll run into in the greater Cincinnati area. What the most common types of slates are that we'll run into as well. And as far as we'll also talk about which slates are considered good slates for roofs to be restored, and what type of slate really probably is not worth restoring. So the next thing we're going to do, is Kurtis has slid this slate in, and he's going to repair it. There's a couple different ways you can go about repairing a slate on a roof, and he's going to demonstrate the bib flashing repair, and I'll let him do that, and then I'll talk a little bit more about it.
We'll take a frame of nail from you.
Good enough. So I don't know how well you can see that from that distance. Free to move the computer around just because I don't want it to, juggle around on everyone. But what Kurtis did is he set a nail right in the slot to hold that slate in place. And then he used what we refer to as a piece of bib flashing. This can be any type of non-corrosive material. So it could be copper or aluminum. We generally use copper ones. And then we just bend it a little bit to create a little bit of pressure. And then we slide that into the slot to cover that nail that we set. And that's all that's required to repair a slate. The other method that you could use is to use a stainless steel hook. We do have them. But you could set a stainless steel hook, and that would be exposed, and that would also hold the slate in place. So either one is acceptable. We just demonstrated the nail and bib repair. Do you want to do that?
Except this, I was thinking I could break one and take it out with the ripper.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
So what we're going to do,
We'll
do now is we're going to actually just break a random slate in the field of the roof, and we'll simulate a broken piece that we run into. Maybe go up a little bit. You won't be able to reach that ripper under there.
Oh, good call.
Because of the box.
This course.
Yeah.
Oh, smash roof. This is why you don't have handyman. Climb around. Yeah, it's sheared up real high.
Oh, okay.
That's kind of what I wanted to show you. Okay, so top of that is broken, and it's in the slot here, which means the crack on this slide is actually running right here. The water will fall in.
Just break the face of it too,
Okay.
so they can see. Yeah. Give me just a second. Yep. So you could probably tell these slates are pretty durable. These are brand new slate, and so you can see they're not fragile. And I think that's a big misconception about slate sometimes, is that when working with it, it is really fragile, and you have to be so careful with it. New slate material is very, very durable. Curtis had to take a couple whacks just to break that piece after jumping up and down on it. So the truth of it is they are durable roofs. Of course, the older they get, you know, they will get fragile, but they are durable. And so
the more foot traffic they get over their life.
Yeah. And a lot of the damage caused on slate roofs is unfortunately from people not really taking care when they're working on them and walking on them. And then they may not break at that time, but over the next few freeze and thaw cycles over the coming years, they will develop hairline cracks, and that's where you'll see the slates shedding out of the roof. And then you have to go back and repair them. So it's really important in how you access the roof and to make sure you're not walking on it, because again, you may not see the damage right now, but you'll see it in the coming years. And so this is going to mimic just a broken slate, a really typical repair, and Curtis will demonstrate how to get it out.
I'm doing is jabbing this thing up in there and trying. It's got that little round tip on the top that lets me find that nail head. Now the slot is free.
So now this is the top of that piece of slate, and we were able to successfully pull the whole thing out. And what you'll notice about both of these nails is we didn't cut them when we pulled them out. We bent them and we pulled them out. And that's an important piece, because you wouldn't want to cut them off and leave the fragments in the roof. That would make it very difficult to slide another slate in. In fact, it may prohibit you from sliding another slate in. So the slate ripper is designed to pull the nails out, pull everything out of that cavity so that you can slide a brand new piece into that place. Okay, why don't you set this one with a slate hook? Okay, yep, I'm gonna get him a hook and we'll demonstrate the other method.
Had a couple questions come in.
Sure.
One has to do with what kind of PPE do you guys use? PPE is talked about a great deal.
Yeah.
We all know masks, we all know gloves, but what do you guys use to keep yourself safe up on a roof?
That's a good question. So it is, if you have scaffolds set up around the entire job site and there's a railing around the scaffolding, then we wouldn't be required to wear personal harnesses. If we're in situations where we don't have scaffolding up there, then even with the walk boards and the jacks, we would still need to wear personal harnesses for fall protection. So I don't know if that's the question or if
Yes,
it's
that
just,
was a question.
yeah.
Yeah.
The same gear that any other roofing trade would be required to use. We are to. The exception that we do run into is because we're often on large buildings where we have to build full staff already. If we have a full platform, then the lines aren't required.
Yeah, and
Henry, can you repeat what he said?
Sorry, go ahead.
Can you repeat what Kurtis said?
Yeah, I think he said that he sort of repeated what I said. And basically, we're often working at really high elevations or on big buildings. And so a lot of times we will have scaffolding set up, which makes it a lot safer. But originally, obviously 100 years ago, when all these roofs were put on, they may have built some scaffolding out of wood, but they weren't using personal fall protection at that time. And, you know, they were relying solely on these boards, these jacks, and three hand tools, and they put the entire roof on with those 3 hand tools. And that was a slate hammer, a slate ripper, and a slate cutter. And that's all they had. That's all they really needed to put these roofs on. And so I think another common misconception about slate roofs is that they're really complicated. You run into a lot of contractors who say, we don't work on them. We don't understand how to work on them, or whatever the case may be. But they're installed using very simple tools for the most part.
Do you want to talk? There's been a lot of conversation through the course of this weekend about tradesmen and younger people coming into the crafts. What do you see as your specific skill set in those coming on?
We see that as our #1 challenge. If
you have enough people, or there are not enough people?
Not enough people, and also, you know, getting people interested in it. It's you know, many of the guys that you know, these skills were handed down to are now, you know, my parents' age, or they're leaving the workforce. And so with them is going a lot of that knowledge. And so what we're finding is a lot more we're having to start over almost from scratch. There's just not even a very good base of knowledge left in the workforce anymore for doing this stuff.
Plus, it's hard work.
It is. It's hard work. So not only, you know, will someone have to be passionate about that trade or that type of work, but they also have to be comfortable with getting dirty every day and working on a slate roof in 90-degree weather with dust all over them and sweating all day long, you know, and so it is difficult. Before we move on, Kurtis, so Kurtis just repaired this second piece of slate, and we used the old repair method when we did that. And we used a slate hook. So this is a stainless steel hook, and all Kurtis did was mark where the bottom of the slate was going to finish. He nailed the slate in, and then he slid the slate in place and hooked it in the end. So it's stainless steel, it'll never corrode, and it's very, very strong. So it'll hold that slate in place long term. So that's the other way you can repair a slate. Either one is perfectly acceptable. I think what Kurtis is doing now is he's setting up a bunch of different slates and tile that we have salvaged over the years. You can't see it obviously today, but our facility has a large storage area with nothing but salvaged slate and tile that we've taken off of roofs over the years, or we've purchased as part of other restoration projects and that inventory. So any of the slate that you would run into in the city here, we have at our facility on hand, and we probably have it in multiple different sizes for doing restoration work. Tile gets a little bit more tricky because there's so many variations of clay tile, but we do have a lot of the common ones here, and we know where to source that material. If a customer has a really unique roof, we should be able to find it so that we can make those repairs, and also make it look that as when we're done, nothing was done. That is the idea. If you find the right salvage material, it should blend in and it should look like nothing ever happened. So I'm going to go over some of the slates that Kurtis has laid out here. So starting from right to left, I'm going to hand you this is a common slate you'll find in the Cincinnati area. It's probably hard to tell because it is weathered, but this is actually unfading from Vermont. This is a beautiful slate roof when installed new. The weathering is down here. You know, this was never exposed, so you see more of the purple on the top. Vermont has more colors of slate in their quarries than anywhere else in the world. And again, this is unfading, meaning it'll never change color.
These two are kind of like peanut butter and jelly. I would say they You often see them blended on roofs. They're both Vermont slates.
Right. Yep. You'll oftentimes see a combination of unfading purple with a green, whether it's a mottled green or a variegated green, which would be a mix of green and purple in the same slate, or a semi-weathering green, which would be a Vermont slate that starts out green, but then over time will change color. And a lot of times it'll change to like a rose color or a buff color. And so there'll be a lot of variation in the roof, even though it all started out as just one color in the beginning. Yeah, rainbow. Yeah. So this is referred to as New York red. This is right on the border. It's quarried right on the border of Vermont. It's still in that same slate region, but it's referred to as New York red, and it's also unfading. It's almost a brick color, and it also will never change color over time. So this piece here is maybe 80, 90, 100 years old, and you can see how it's really retained its red color. These are used, they're very popular for making like inscriptions in roofs, putting the date or someone's name or putting a decorative band. Every so often you'll see the entire roof done in New York red, but more often than not, they're used just to detail the roof in a really unique way.
One I'm aware of in all of Old Louisville.
There's the roof we know of in Clifton in the Gaslight District, a really big house that has an entire New York red roof.
The bell of the ball here.
Yeah, you're gonna call this peach bottom or Buckingham?
Peach bottom. Well, I'm calling that peach bottom because that's what I think that's.
Yeah. So this is probably, well, this is one of the best slates in the world, and it's also one of the most common slates that you'll find in Greater Cincinnati. We refer to it as peach bottom. It's no longer quarried. It was quarried on the border of Maryland and Pennsylvania, and the quarry ran underneath a river, and so they had to abandon it. The yield was also very low on this material. I believe the last time I read about it, they were only yielding something like 3 or 4% of all the material they pulled out of the ground, they actually turned into roofing slate. So they had these overburdens of slate piled up everywhere, like mountains of slate they pulled out of the ground, but only 3 or 4% actually turned into finished product. So it was a very arduous task to get this out of the ground, but it's very good material. It's referred to as peach bottom, and there's a ton of this still in Cincinnati. This could easily be expected to last for 200 years or better, if maintained.
One fun history note about the peach bottom, the reason it was so famous is it won an award at the Southern Exposition in Louisville as the best slate in the world in the 1890s. And then because of that, it was specified all up and down the Ohio River. Like anywhere that had river access and has a big town has peach bottom in the like nicer older homes.
And then we said we would also talk about slates that are not generally restorable roofs. And that would be your Pennsylvania slate from Lehigh or Northampton counties. This was considered a soft vein of slate. And it was also just inconsistent. They pulled roofs out of that quarry that would fail in 40 years. And then they would also pull roofs out that would last 115 years. But generally, we see them last 70 to 80 years, maybe 90, but they probably should have been replaced, in the last 20 years. And what you'll find is, and this isn't a good example of it because this piece is still in really good shape, but they just start to kind of shale and fall apart and disintegrate. And that's all due to it not being as hard of a slate from the beginning. And it's taken on, it's just taken on more moisture over the years, and so it's broken the material down.
That was kind of dead, yeah.
Yeah, and you can hear how dead this sounds compared to those hard slates. And I think you can see sort of some of that shaling that's going on there on the surface, or spalling that's going on the surface. So we get a lot of calls to come out and look at slate roofs that are, we call them Penn black, Pennsylvania black. Penn black roofs, and a lot of times they can't be restored. They need to be taken off and a new roof needs to go on. But every so often we find one that's in really good shape and we're still able to make some repairs to it and keep it going. but it wouldn't be worth any type of real significant investment at this point.
So that brings up a question. May I ask a question at this time?
Sure.
Talking about the longevity and the price point and return on investment, because this is not a $10,000 roof. So how do you, and your homeowners are passionate about their being true to their home. How is it, how do you make the proposal feel good to them?
Well,
Because you
very good
have
question.
a skilled,
I
a
think
very
the answer is
skilled
sort of
trade here.
twofold. Right, right. Yeah, and I think you have to look at it two ways. One is, are you restoring an existing roof, or are you trying to sell a customer a brand new roof? The brand new roof is a lot harder to bite off. It's much, much more expensive than a conventional modern, asphalt shingle roof or something you can buy. I would say it's 8 to 10 times as expensive as a modern asphalt shingle roof. And so it's one of those things where the owner has to be really involved, right? They have to be passionate about the building. They have to want to see what's best for the building long term, because you're not going to get your return on investment in 10 years or 15 or 20 years. Now if you break that down over the life of that roof, 100 years, 150 years, maybe even 200 years, then of course the payback is there. But you've got to be working with a client that is thinking in those terms. And so we do a couple brand new slate roofs every year, but the bulk of our work is really in the restoration side of it. People with existing roofs that we're trying to save, and we can do that in an economical way. We can make that make sense for homeowners very easily. It might be a little bit more than putting on a new roof to restore that slate roof, but then they're good. And they should have another 50 years of service out of that roof with just some general maintenance every year, not even every year, maybe every few years, have some general maintenance done that's not gonna break the bank at that point.
You still need to clean your gutters.
Yeah. You still need to clean your gutters. You still need to have some maintenance done, but anybody with an old home is used to the maintenance that comes with an old historic home. So hopefully that answers the question. A brand new slate roof, replacing it is a tough sell. And again, we do a couple a year. The companies that are doing a lot of those are traveling a lot more. They're seeking out those clients nationwide, and they're going to those clients. Most of the work we do is in Greater Cincinnati. And so because of that, a lot of it is more on the restoration side. Obviously, I guess the client that best fits the bill for new slate roofs, maybe universities, municipalities with those historic buildings, and really with the resources and budgets to make that leap.
Or
and
even
also
small multifamily, like you see a lot of 4 square that are like, especially out in Oakley and stuff, that are like 4 apartments.
That's led into another question.
That building for a really long time. Churches and institutions.
So that led into a question. Without holding your feet to the fire, is there a ballpark square footage, price per square footage?
Yeah, absolutely. I think especially in today's climate, you could expect somewhere between $30 and $40 a square foot for a brand new slate roof. But I would say, without having really dialed down on this, on the restoration side, you could probably restore a slate roof for somewhere in the $10 a square foot range, I would think, And so if you have a good slate, like this peach bottom slate, I'm sure this slate is 100 years old. And it's pretty indistinguishable from it being brand. And if you have this slate on your house and it's in good shape, there would be no reason not to restore this roof at that price point. You would get many, many years of service, and you could never get a better roof for
Literally
for fire resistance, for
couldn't
hail
buy it.
resistance. You just could not get a better roof with any other material available.
And can you talk about, as we're heading to the finish line here, can you talk about maintenance?
Yeah, absolutely. So Kurtis demonstrated a couple ways to repair slates, but there is much more to that when maintaining a slate roof. A lot of times what we see is all of the sheet metal used 100 years ago was terneplate, or they referred to it as tin. I'm sure many people have heard that term. And so that material was very thin and it had a long life expectancy, but most of it is all worn out now. It's developed, it's corroded. It all had the red paint on it. Kurtis is bringing up an old built-in gutter liner for us now. But that's an old piece of terneplate.
This is actually a second generation.
Yeah, it is. But
Yeah.
we don't need to go into too much detail about it.
I'm over here doing forensics.
But a lot of times the sheet metal on the roof, around the chimneys, around the soil stacks, or in the valleys, that sheet metal has worn out. And so the slates need to be taken apart in those areas, and then new copper material needs to be installed. So when we talk about a restoration, if it's a full restoration, we're going to address all those details on the roof where there's sheet metal involved. And we're going to take the old sheet metal out, and we're going to make new sheet metal, new flashings, and we're going to install that material and then put the slates back in place. And any slates that are broken, we'll supplement with matching material. So again, when we're done, it won't look like a whole lot happened other than you might see some shiny copper until it dulls down. So hopefully that answers the question.
Is there anything that a homeowner can do just to add to the longevity of their slate roof?
Yeah, get someone qualified to work on it. And we
But nothing preventative?
Inspect.
Yeah.
I mean,
Clean your gutters out. I mean, a homeowner, to be honest, I mean, I feel like they're pretty treacherous roofs to walk around on, right? You can't walk on the slate. So immediately you need the proper equipment, tools, equipment, safety gear to really get up there and work on it, or to even clean it off. So I think you need to have someone qualified. Just from a safety standpoint, we would recommend that. Even if it were a handyman just going up there and cleaning the gutters out and sweeping out the valleys and things, as long as they're not walking on the roof.
So what I'm hearing is it's not just because of the dangerous situation of the homeowner and the slate on the roof, that it would make sense to maybe annually have a professional come and just do a quick inspection.
Yes. Or if they find a roofing contractor that you're comfortable with, we certainly provide this service, but find a roofing contractor you're comfortable with to work on the roof. And I don't even know if it needs to be every year, maybe every other year, check it out. The homeowner should be doing things like visually checking the roof, right? They should be looking for things like slates sliding out, or a broken piece up there, or metal coming off around the chimney, or something that looks out of place. They should do those visual inspections. And then if they see something like that, get it taken care of before it becomes.
That's good advice. Very good advice.
I think that's the biggest thing the homeowner could do.
the roof is easy to read from the ground in that it will reveal itself. If there's a defect in the roof, meaning if you have a broken slate and it's missing, you can look up and see on a visual cue right away that you've got a problem. So, I mean, even just the same thing you would do with any part of your exterior, like, you know, you do your spring cleaning, you do your first yard work in the spring, you're walking around, you maybe do a visual like check on each side.
And right before you guys started your presentation, there was a presentation on box gutters. Mm-hmm. So there's a little hand-in-hand association there too.
Yeah, and we also work on built-in gutters, and you very rarely find a slate roof that doesn't have a built-in gutter attached to it. So yeah, the two are married well. They are.
They're not the same trade, but you'd be hard pressed to find a company that, especially in this region, that was doing slate but did not also do box gutters and vice versa.
Correct. Usually built-in gutters, copper sheet metal work, slate and tile, those all go hand in hand. The last thing, and I don't know how we are in time, but I didn't want to miss this. We always recommend homeowners with a slate roof go out and buy Joseph Jenkins' book called The Slate Roof Bible. You can look it up online. You can buy it from his store. It's called The Slate Roof Bible. It's an excellent read. It chronicles maybe 30 years of his life in the slate roofing industry. He's traveled all over the world. He gives tons and tons of photos on all the different types of slate, goes into much more detail than we did today, as well as talks about repair methods, as well as talks about ways for homeowners to sort of interview contractors and to make sure that they're confident they've got the right person working on their roof. That's probably the biggest takeaway from that book. And even if you didn't buy the book, you could probably just find that checklist, things to ask your contractor. Things like, are you going to walk on the roof? How are you going to access it? What type of equipment will you be using? What hand tools do you need to work on my slate roof? Just some of those very basic questions would immediately give the homeowner the information they need to determine whether or not who they're about to hire is really qualified to work on that roof or not.
Slate Roof Bible, you say?
Yep, by Joseph Jenkins. And he's also got hundreds of excellent videos online about slate roofs and working on and restoring them.
It is the owner's name. If you have a home with a slate roof, it's,
Yeah.
I'm doing a quick check. I don't see any additional questions. I think they were all answered through the course of your presentation. Is there anything you want to add? We did put up your email, not your email, but your website.
I would just say, hopefully next year we can do something in person.
That would be awesome.
Yeah. So again, we're HKC Roofing. You can find us online at hkcroofing.com. Our website is authentic in that it does display all of our own employees, all of our own jobs. You won't find any photoshopped images there. It's all us. We're real people. And there's a lot of good information on there, case studies, projects we've done, and you'll find some prominent projects that we've done on there.
How many years have you been doing this with us? Because this is our 10-year anniversary.
This is our 14th year in business.
But how many times have you this is an endorsement on how much we value your company. How many years have you been a presenter at the Northern Kentucky event?
This is our first year at your guys' event.
We'd asked you before. So I'm just trying to say, you've been part of our networking group for many, many years. So we're really pleased and proud that you were able to actually join us this year.
Yeah, well, thank you for having us, and hopefully we can do it in person here soon. And I think we could, I think there'd be a lot of benefit in the demonstration and the answering of questions and the engagement. I know these things can be difficult.
Thank you for participating to our participants and to our host here, Preserving Historic Roofs from HKC Roofing. And after this session, there will be a short break. The techno people will be providing a link and some questions on a poll for different projects. And this session has been taped. So at some point it will be put back up for additional review. If we have no more from you guys, we want to say thank you
and have a nice weekend.
very much. Yes, you too. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Bye-bye.